Hello, my name is Tara Brabazon and I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to Vlog 38, Academic/Journalism. Today's session continues our suite where I've explored the nature of academic research. We've done sessions on predatory publishing, we've done sessions on open access, on journal rankings, and also citations. But this vlog is a bit different and signals a movement to a new area for us. I'm going to present how-to guides, how to write particular modes of academic dissemination. And certainly this may seem an odd place to start, journalism. But this session comes via request from one of our wonderful students, Rhiannon, who wants to find new ways to disseminate her research to new audiences. So Rhiannon, it's my great pleasure to develop this session and present it for you today. And it is a session that has a lot of personal and professional interest for me. It is personally significant, and I'll be putting a little bit more personal detail into these vlogs than I normally do today, but also it's of professional interest. Before I came to this current post at Flinders and returned to Australia, I was a professor of media, a professor of communication, a professor of creative media, and I taught professional writing and journalism to tens of thousands of people around the world. So it matters a great deal to me professionally as well. And I've chosen the phrase academic journalism with intent today. It's either an adjective and a noun or a compound noun. So it could simply refer to academics writing journalism, but I would argue it means a lot more than that. Academic journalism is a particular genre, a way of thinking and a way of writing, a way of communicating our research. Now, journalism, really good journalism, is incredibly difficult to write. Whether we're discussing the writing of, say, news or feature articles or an opinion piece, it's radically different from other modes of thinking about academic articles or books. It's not easier than other forms of writing, and in fact, in many ways, it's incredibly difficult because it requires a brevity, a clarity, a commitment, a courage, and a passion that's not often required in other forms of academic writing. So many academics write dreadful, or at least banal and a bit boring journalism. So what I want for you is not to be of their number. It is really intriguing, I think, in academic life that being journalistic is often used as a term of abuse. So, that's a bit journalistic. I'm sorry, that is very poor. That's a dreadful thing to say, and I hope everyone watching this vlog, if it ever crosses your mind to say, that's a bit journalistic as a term of abuse, stop yourself. Because journalism at its very best is remarkable, is extraordinary. It's not a term of abuse. And if you are interested in being an organic intellectual in the Gramscian sense, that is transforming common sense to good sense, then academic journalism is the way to do that. Journalism is important here. So I'm going to structure this vlog today by talking about how and why you may decide to write journalism, how to get involved in it with some clear strategies about what it actually looks like if you just want to start, if you want to put your toe in the water. I'll teach you how to do that. I'm also going to talk about the challenges that you need to watch when you're entering this field, and finally, the personal bit really, the great strengths and the great joys in writing journalism and why perhaps really you should consider it. Okay, so why academics write journalism and perhaps why should you write journalism? Now, academics choose to write journalism because they wish to widen out the audience for their research. They wish to convince. They wish to spread out their academic research so it can influence policymakers but also citizens. Now, how to write journalism. If you've never ever thought about writing journalism, let me just give you some quick tips to start. Firstly, aim to get to 1,000 words. So that's a good solid start. So it's a 1,000 word piece on one topic with a clear spine and a clear argument. Remember, you are writing to convince. So short sentences and very few adjectives. Commence with a story if you can. Draw your audience into your prose. And most importantly, have always a sense of propulsion in your work. You're writing to convince. Why should your reader care? Why should your reader be interested in your research? Why? Make sure that why question, why they should care, is part of what you're doing in that piece. Remember also that the protocols from academic writing do apply, so it is important that you are accurate. Don't omit facts to make your argument. You must be balanced, you must be rigorous. But also remember, journalism works from deductive reasoning. So present your argument or your case at the start, and the subsequent paragraphs build evidence to confirm that. To write journalism really is a great discipline, I think, for academics, because we start to learn to write clearly for a reader. And if you think about the bulk of your training and research training as an academic, how often do you think about writing for a reader? And the answer is very rarely. So when we're thinking about the differences between academic journalism and academic writing more generally, there are a few differences. The intended audience, the purpose of the writing, the focus of the writing, but also the organisation of material and the language selection. They are differences. So why should you, yes you, consider writing journalism? Well, throughout my career, basically journalism has been the pivot, the point where I've moved into different points and stages of my career. Early on, when I was an early career researcher, my first early academic journalism gigs were in Arts Hub and Online Opinion, so small little organisations with online journalism. So I used these gigs as an opportunity to enlarge my professional writing, but also show my wares, use it as a way to show what I can do and show that I can write in a really clear and convincing way. And I particularly enjoyed writing for Arts Hub in those early days because as a popular culture expert, it allowed me to play with the Australian arts establishment in a really interesting way. But I proved to myself that I could write a weekly column, and that was incredibly important at that time. Now, in that early stage of my career, I was writing for free. It was a free gig. And that's because, I suppose, as a woman, you have to demonstrate that you can do something before anybody will actually hire you to do it for real. And within a few years, I'd moved to the United Kingdom and to a paid gig at the Times Higher Education. I worked for the Times Higher for 4 years, producing weekly articles, weekly columns for them. I was a columnist, and I still write for the Times Higher to this day. In fact, after I finish this blog, it's Sunday morning, after I finish this session today, I'm going into my office to write another article for them right now. So these articles provided a crucial momentum for my life, because I used to try academic articles out in journalism first before I wrote them up into the refereed literature or into books. And my book, and yes, there's a book sitting here, woo! My book, Thinking Popular Culture, which I'm incredibly proud of, won a few awards this one, Thinking Popular Culture, all of that came from my Times Higher Education journalism, where I trialled out ideas. And those ideas built into this book, where I created a new way of thinking about popular culture. Incredibly proud of this, and this book wouldn't have come if I hadn't been writing journalism for years before then. So as you can see, the role of the Times Higher Education in my career has been absolutely crucial. In fact, It's really built my career. And when I die, I know what my obituary is going to look like. My obituary is going to say Tara Brabazon, winner of 6 teaching awards, writer of 30 books, and columnist for the Times Higher Education. That's how important journalism has been in my career. So for you guys and gals right now, it's so much easier to prove and to find avenues for your journalism beyond what I had. So there's not only blogs that we'll talk about in a second, but you've got the conversation, you've got online opinion, and Steve, my wonderful husband Steve, has just written for a new online environment called Culture Matters. And he found that environment, Culture Matters, really, really productive. So you may like to consider that as well. Now, I tend to be wary, as you should be, with many of these online publishers. They change titles, they remove arguments, they muck about with your prose, so be very careful. And also, please remember, they are ripping you off. They are getting your content for free, and they're using your content to build their audience and their advertising revenue. So when you're writing for these free online fora, please make sure you are writing for yourself, to build up your content, to build up your CV. And when you've done that enough, stop and move to a paying gig. Really important. And also be really careful, you don't need a bad editor changing your work, because you are an academic. If an editor changes your work to an argument that you don't believe in, it can hurt your career. So be careful. If you're thinking of working with one of these online editors, then what I'd advise is have a look at the articles, see if they are of quality, and you know what? I'd write to some of the columnists, write to some of the academics, and see if they're happy with how their words have been used. Also remember, if you don't want to be paid, or it's not a big deal for you, and particularly you don't want your views changed, do think about a blog. Because these days a blog is almost as good as being on some of these online fora. You're showing that you can do the work, you're showing that you can regularly deliver very interesting ideas, and you have control over the material. You can link it to your CV. So do consider a blog. Okay, so what creates really great journalism? What are the characteristics? Well, it must start with content. You must have something evocative, powerful, and passionate. You must have something to say. Now, that's the most important thing. Secondly, you must have something to say that connects with an audience. Now, it doesn't matter if that audience is incredibly small, that's no worries at all. But just find a way through your prose to connect content to an audience. That is what journalism does. You also must have a story to tell. Analysis is not enough. Find a way to craft your research into a narrative arc. Tell the story. Often we as academics tend to write long. So we write very, very long pieces and then we shorten it down through drafting. This is incredibly important with journalism. Write long, no worries at all, but you're really going to have to edit tightly. And remember, 1,000 words is about the maximum of most pieces of journalism. So every word must be scrutinized. Short sentences, short paragraphs. Ensure there is a beginning, a middle, and yes, an end. And do not start writing until in one sentence you can convey your argument. So what are you going to say? What's the point of this? If you can get that into one sentence, then you are ready to write that article. At its best, journalism allows us as scholars to contribute to public life. And that's what we're meant to be doing. That's why we're paid by the public purse. So I find academic journalism incredibly inspiring. I've always loved the puzzle of words. I love the challenge of getting really complicated ideas into a clear, precise fashion in 1,000 words. I love doing that. And indeed, the best journalism I've ever written, I've written 1,000 words in 15 minutes with actually very little editing. It's come in one piece. Every now and again in your life, an amazing piece of writing comes in one piece, fully formed. It is simply magical. There is an inspiration, I think, in writing well, writing a singular argument that shines like a golden thread through an article. Very precious. But I do have warnings for you. Yes, writing journalism is a profound gift. It can build a remarkable profile. But if you write online journalism, there will be trolls and there will be people who abuse you. And for the women who are watching this vlog, hi guys, you will be abused for how you look, how you sound, your hair, your face, your nationality, anything you can possibly imagine, you will confront abuse. So you have to make sure that you are tough, that you are resilient, that you are ready to take and confront abuse. And if you're not, then really do not go into online journalism. Just because we are academics does not mean that we are immune. In fact, the clever woman is the target for trolls. That's the point. Now, what I decided very early on in my career is I've never read the comments in response to my articles because I just don't need that negativity in my life. So I've never read the comments. But a mate of mine who is a professor in the States actually uses one of my articles for the Times Higher Education to teach how women are treated online. So he presents to the students my article, they all read the article and they go, that's a fantastic article, that's great. Then he disseminates to them the hundreds of comments that have come in response to that article, and the students are able to see in full clarity what actually happens to women when they write online. So pretty powerful. I've had a man block me as I'm trying to leave work to get through a car park to get onto a train when I worked in Brighton. The man so hated my article and so hated me that he physically tried to stop me getting home. And it took me 25 minutes to try and stop the intimidation and actually get onto my train and get home. So if you want to claim public space, then you are going to have to manage public abuse. It's not great, it's not what we want, it's not good, but it's reality. So you've got to be able to take it. So I've presented the dark side of journalism so you can prepare yourselves, because if you write long enough, bad stuff online is going to happen to you. But I did also want to finish with why we do this. Why it's so great to do journalism. That's why actually I'm recording this vlog, as you might see, in a different location. I'm in my music room in my house, and I've chosen this room for a very specific reason. Why are you doing this? Why would journalism be something you would consider? Well, I've written hundreds of articles for the Times Higher Education, and unbelievably, 4 of the 5 most highly read articles in the history of the Times Higher Education I've written. Isn't that amazing? A girl from Perth, remarkable for my sort of background. That is a great privilege that I appreciate every single day. What an incredible privilege that is. But one of my articles that was not the most read was written on Crowded House and the legendary guitarist Roger McGuinn. I work in popular culture. That's one of my areas of expertise. And one of the great joys of journalism is I get a chance to write about the passions of really great pop. And I grew up with Split Enz. I love Split Enz so much. I went and worked in New Zealand for a period, but I had my childhood with Split Enz and my youth and my adulthood with Crowded House. And when I was preparing this vlog a couple of weeks ago, of course, Crowded House had just done that big concert in front of the Sydney Opera House. And I was reminded then about what journalism is and the role of academics in writing that really interesting journalism. And you see, I wrote an article on Crowded House. I was playing between the categories of being an academic, an intellectual, and being a fan. And particularly, I wanted to log Neil Finn's generosity during their 1989 tour of the United States, touring the Temple of Low Men album. And Roger McGuinn, the legendary guitarist and founder of the Byrds, was their support act. Rather interesting inversion. But I published an article on the profound respect that Neil Finn showed to Roger McGuinn during that concert. And I argued that the intellectual generosity that Neil Finn showed is really a model for the rest of us, because so much of academic life is based on jealousy and envy and nastiness and bitterness, that Neil Finn showed Roger McGuinn such kindness and decency and respect for his innovation and for his life that I thought, wow, that's a pretty good model for higher education. Now, I was incredibly proud of that article as a piece of writing. Came in one piece. I thought it was a lovely bit of work, loved it. But what happened after that article was published was even more spectacular. Camilla McGuinn, the legendary Roger McGuinn's manager, his wife, and a wonderful businesswoman in her own right, commented on that article online, but because I don't read the comments, she then proceeded to email me at my university in the United Kingdom. You see, Roger McGuinn, how can I explain how big a fan I am of him? Well, I'm such a big fan of Roger McGuinn that I bought 2 of his Rickenbackers through my life. The 6-string when I was 17 years old and the 12-string when I was 38 years old. I love this man so much, I bought his guitars twice. Now, I've played guitar since I was 5 years old, and it was always the dream to own a Rickenbacker because that's what Roger McGuinn played. So when Camilla contacted me, I think you've got some sense of my level of profound excitement. Wow. So I was talking with Camilla and we wanted to find a way to acknowledge her and acknowledge Roger McGuinn at a university. And so I had written a course at the University of Brighton called the Master of Arts Creative Media. Wonderful course, wrote it from scratch, wonderful, profound course, wonderful people moved through it. And one of the modules that I taught in that Master's was sonic media. So we agreed to found a prize in sonic media, and that became the Camilla and Roger McGuinn Prize for sonic media. And one of our wonderful students at Flinders University in our PhD program, Mick Winter, I've known so long, he actually did the Masters with me at the University of Brighton, and Mick won the Camilla and Roger McGuinn Prize for social media. Didn't you, Mick? And then the amazing thing then happened that Roger and Camilla were touring the United Kingdom, and they invited Steve and I to a concert at St Albans during their tour. Front row, backstage pass. Ew, posh. Now, as you can see, I really love Roger McGuinn. I loved him so much. I bought his guitar twice. But for Steve, my wonderful husband Steve, he loved Roger McGuinn so much that he hitchhiked from Blackpool to Bath for the Bath Festival in 1970. And he was one of 250,000 people at the Bath Festival. So this was the summer just before he started university. So all these years later at St Albans, the two of us as professors trundled off to see Roger McGuinn play. We saw him live. Steve met him backstage. Many photographs were taken. But it's one of the few times, in fact, I think it is actually the only time in my life where my 6'2" husband looked into the eyes of another 6'2" man, quite rare in life. And when the pair of them looked at each other, it was as if time stopped just for a moment. And when that moment passed, Steve and I walked back to the hotel after that gig in St Albans. And Steve said to me, I was always told, Tars, that you should never meet your heroes. And I was like horrified. I thought, oh, Dale, no. Were you disappointed? I'm so sorry. And he replied, no. It's been absolutely amazing. And I looked over and it was like that 17-year-old boy was back. It was a remarkable moment. So journalism can open doors that conventional academic life just cannot. We've talked about impact and we've talked about journal rankings, but very few areas of academic life allow you to meet your heroes. And journalism can allow you to do that. Follow your inspiration with passion and with clarity. As always, I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.